These two are good. I can't speak for anyone else.
Mom's broken them in well. Yeah, they've helped Dad work on the car. That's all they need to know.
That was great.
This is going to be an interactive conversation about being an author, and hopefully it forces you to think. One thing we're going to lay out right up front is this isn't easy. It absolutely is not easy being an author. You might enjoy the writing process, but to be a professional author, one who makes money off their words, sometimes you have to sit at the computer and type words when you don't feel like it. And sometimes you have to type words for a week or 2 weeks to finish that story that you thought went off the rails, but you can't fix it until after you have it down. You cannot edit a blank page. You cannot rewrite a story that's not written. And sometimes that sucks. It's hard work. Or it's like work when you're thinking, hey, if you love your job, you never work a day in your life, right? Have you heard that? It's wrong. If you love your job, you work every day of your life. My first 5 years, I think I took a week off, maybe total. And it grated on my soul because I had so much to do. You can't just do nothing. I'm going to ask, what do you like to read? What do you read? We'll start with Eva.
What, me?
Yeah. Oh,
I like to read fantasy.
Fantasy? What's your favorite author?
I'm not sure how to pronounce his name anymore.
Rick Riordan.
It's pronounced differently.
Oh.
Yeah, I
Riordan.
don't know
The Percy Jackson author.
Oh, excellent. Excellent choice. Excellent choice. What else do you like to read? What do you like to read? Yeah, you're on the hook. Oh my God, they're looking at me.
Like dystopian books and like horrors as well.
And horror. Oh my God. Like Suzanne Collins, like the Hunger Games.
Something like that.
Yeah, it's
I'm not sure that
dystopian.
would count as horror.
Well, dystopian.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
What do you like to write? Read. What do you like to read?
I read a lot of genres, like anything under the YA,
Mhm.
like nonfiction, like autobiographies, biographies.
Good broad range. Good broad range. It's hard to develop a style with that broad of a reading range. What do you like to read?
Me?
Right? Yeah. What do you like to read?
I like to read sometimes horrors, a lot of fantasy.
Horror. Why are young people reading horror?
Yeah.
What's wrong with you? What do you like to read?
Me?
Yeah.
Everything. Fantasy, sci-fi, comics, politics, history, anything.
Focus, people. Focus. What do you like to read? Yeah, you're on the hook. It's cool. It's cool.
I read almost everything, but I usually like to read fantasy.
What kind of fantasy? Urban fantasy?
Urban fantasy, epic fantasy, almost anything.
Keeper of the Lost Cities.
That's great.
I've read this.
That's great. And I believe that every author is a reader first. You can be a storyteller and not read, because that's how we grew up. I live in Alaska, and they have what's known as a story knife with the Alaska Natives. And that's where they tell stories by carving into sand. And then you wipe the sand clean, and then you start the story again. And every story is fresh, but it's spoken. It's spoken and visual, and that's how they passed down their culture over all the years until they had written language, because nothing survived. There's no old text from any of the Yupik villages because the life is so harsh, and they don't have trees, and they didn't make wood or paper. All kinds of opportunity for storytelling without reading. So they watched it, and then they learned. But that's it. You watch, and in your case, you read the story and you learn. So then the hard question, what do you like to write? And this is, when you write a story, you commit how much of your life to writing that story. So if you don't like to write it, how much of your life are you going to suffer writing it? Because you thought, hey, this is cool. My boyfriend likes reading this, I'm going to write it. And you find out this sucks. What do you like to write?
Oh, me?
Yeah, you're up.
Action thrillers.
Action thrillers. Kind of like what? Give me a market. If I was to watch
Sci-fi.
TV and turn something on TV, what would be comparable to what you rate?
I'm not sure about TV, but with games, Halo would be similar.
Okay.
What I read.
I gotta remember the crowd I'm talking to. There you go. What video game does this relate to? Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. Yes, sir.
I like to write, well, basically what I like to read. I like to write dystopian and horror, psychological horror comedies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Maze Runner. What game or what movie would be relate to what you like to write?
There's not necessarily a movie, but there's a short show called International Q. It's very obscure, I know, but it's essentially a horror comedy that features very, very, very dark topics, but includes a lot of comedy as well, and I really find that very interesting. And finding the right balance between two things that are pretty much juxtaposed completely is amazing to me. So
Horror and comedy.
yeah, and not like satire comedy that makes fun of horror. You know? I mean, like a balance between the two.
I'll tell you, I didn't like Alien, the movie, the first one, because that seemed like pure horror, the jumping out at you kind of stuff. I didn't like that. But Aliens, I spent 20 years in the Marine Corps. Aliens, I loved that movie because it was the Marines, even though they had a little jumpy outy stuff, it was still,
That's actually
and
my favorite movie.
it was funny as hell. From a Marine's perspective, this is funny, even though it's kind of horror. I get you. I get you. I understand what you're trying to accomplish and what you like. It takes practice to get there. What do you like to write?
Me?
Yeah.
Alternate world fantasy, medieval fantasy. I don't really know what to compare it to.
Okay. Alternate world fantasy. What about TV? Anything come to mind? Anything comparable?
Not really.
Okay.
Games.
The challenge of writing, and this is as a professional author, as you're growing up and looking at, hey, people are liking my stories. If you want to make money and make good money, you got to know who's going to read those stories. Because writing the book is the hardest thing you're going to do until you get it written, and then it's only half the battle. The other half is putting that book into the right reader's hands, whether it's mid-grade, whether it's young adult, whether it's adults. Look at Harry Potter. $1 billion in book sales alone. And adults read it. Adults loved it. Kids loved it. I started reading it, I think it was 40, 42, 45 when I started reading it. It was good. Got dark in a hurry, but it was good.
I was forced to write 8-sentence summaries every time I read it. So
But thinking about the entire process, it's a lot easier to sell a book if you know who's going to read that book. If you write with the target audience in mind, and the starting point for everybody is me. I'm writing what I like to read. All right, what do I like? How do I target other people like me to get that book? And we're not talking about craft. We're not talking about making sure you get your grammar right. Is it past tense? Is it third person past? Is it first person present? How are you writing the book? That should go with your genre. If you read something and this is what I like, what's the common element? So reading with intentionality. Are you reading to understand? This is what I like about this genre. These are we call them tropes. These are the tropes. Okay, gotta have that. Romance, gotta have that happily ever after. Fantasy. Do you have to have magic? Possibly. Do you have elves? What do you have? Do you have otherworldly creatures? What makes it fantasy? Is it the epic scope of the world? Those are tropes. Those are things that you need to put in your books and need to put in your story, because that's audience, reader expectations. You have to manage your reader expectations, and instead of telling them you're gonna like this book despite the fact that there's no elves, it's better to throw in some elves and you hit their expectations. You shouldn't have to tell a reader why they will like your book. They should like it because it hits with the expectations of that readership. You pick the biggest one you can find. If you're writing various levels of fantasy, then fantasy, maybe epic fantasy, maybe high fantasy. What's the difference between those, by the way? Epic fantasy and high fantasy. These are, why do we have genres? Oh, you know, come on, tell us.
Oh,
You raise your hand.
high fantasy is like elves, isn't it? And then epic fantasy is like maybe magic, like the big magic systems.
Kind of maybe. The scope of the journey in epic and high, the scope of the journey. I lost my train of thought there. Writing with the target, sorry about that. Writing with the target audience in mind. It makes it a lot easier, and you can still write what you want to write. You just make sure, like you throw in a few elves or something to make sure you hit that manage that reader expectation and deliver to it. Well, I absolutely don't want elves. Then don't advertise to the high fantasy market. Okay, you can do that. Are you cutting out a certain amount of readers that you don't want to cut out? Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling, that series has been read by 9% of the English-speaking population of the world. Only 9%. Okay, it's $1 billion in book sales, but she wrote stories that appealed to that broad of an audience. Which that's the lightning strike. I mean, we use that as that's the top of the mountain. Even though, I mean, she still advertises. You still see ads for Harry Potter. So there's farther to go. You're not stuck anywhere on the mountain. There's more climb left, even at 9% of your audience. You don't need to get anywhere near that, but you do need to be able to target the biggest chunk possible. So reading, if I can do anything, I encourage you to read and try to read consistently in the genre that you're going to write. Because if you read across all spectrums, that's good because it exposes you different styles. But you have to focus. If this is what you're going to write, read as many books as you can in what you're going to write. You're here because you want to be authors. You're here because you're contemplating it. It's hard to tell if you want to be what you want to be when you're 12 or 16 or 18 or 38 in my case before I decide what I want to be. See, in the Marine Corps, you spend your whole Marine Corps career figuring out, once I retire, what do I want to be? So it took me a few more years, and then I went to law school. And after being a lawyer, I realized I really didn't want to be a lawyer. So that took me until 52. I was 52 years old when I started writing full time. So it's okay, you've got a lot of time. What do you want out of life? Put you on the hook. What do you want out of life? It's a very deep question. And I bet you no matter what anybody's age is here, they would have a hard time with that question if they haven't had time to think about it. But you're on the hook to answer. What do you want out of life?
Let me preface this by I go to a very academic, heavy focused school.
Okay.
So most of the time, what we're thinking about is having a stable career
Okay.
that maybe is in like a STEM field.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say maybe at this point, be financially stable
Okay.
and have minimal regrets.
Minimal regrets. That's not a good life. As I say, when you die, you don't want to be like just keel over, just shrivel away. You want to come sliding sideways into that parking spot, slam into something, and it's a declared victory, all covered in sweat. Yeah, that's how you want to end. But a stable life, minimal regrets. So safe. You want something safe going forward. There's a lot to be said for that. What kind of risks are in writing?
Financial, for sure.
Ups and downs. What if you write a series that takes off, does great, and then all of a sudden your next series doesn't? And there's always that risk. So understanding that there is risk while writing, it's how do you balance that? So what do you want out of life? I need this balance, so I'll have a day job, and then I'll write one book a year. So balancing, understanding, and that's why I asked that question. You have to understand everything, because if you were to try to, I'm just going to go write full time, you would put a lot of stress on yourself, because it is not a consistent, safe thing. However, once you establish a certain level, and there are people out here, there's a lot of people, waited until 2 times, 3 times their day job income that they were making consistently before they said, I'm going to cut ties and just write full time. And then there are people who did that and had to go back to the day job because it was too much pressure. I have to write now, I have to be creative, oh my God. You build that muscle memory. What do you want? What do you want out of life?
Just be carefree.
Be carefree. How does that relate to a writing?
Kind of like I can be able to do what I would like without having to worry about others' thoughts and their opinions.
There's a certain amount of stick-to-itiveness that you need to do when you write. And when you write, it's sometimes you don't want to. And that is a challenge. You will have to find a balance and a way to rectify that, because sometimes you have to sit down in the seat and get on the computer and write. And this is not passive income, this is not easy. So there's a challenge. But once you get into writing and you find, so maybe you'll find your rhythm, but understand, it's going to challenge you and what you want out of life to be a writer. Yeah, I know, you're on the hook now.
I went to do a bunch of things. I went to adventure.
Mm-hmm.
Just,
How do you think that will help your writing?
well, I think if I adventure a lot and see a lot of places or something, that'll give me more to choose from.
Experience.
Right? And then also with writing, you can write from different places, so I wouldn't have to stay in one area.
That is a huge, huge benefit to being an author. When you write full time, you can do it wherever you want. Whatever you can afford, whether it's a van life, whether it's couch surfing your way across the United States, whatever you need to do, but you can write anywhere, especially if you have the self-discipline to sit down and get your word count each day. Getting that word count is, it's a way to discipline the mind and deliver a product, because at the end of the day, the story that you've loved and embraced and massaged and rolled out there, at the end of the day, it becomes a product. And you have to take off your artist hat and put on your balding business head, and you have to sell your baby. It's sometimes when you first start out, that becomes a little more difficult. As you get along and you get the readers saying, I love this, and I can't wait for the next one, and then it's like you're giving a present as opposed to selling your baby. You're like giving a present to people. Hey, I made you lasagna. Who doesn't want to give lasagna? What do you want in life? Yeah, it's you.
Be happy wherever I end up. Nope.
Yeah.
I know there's a line straight from me to you. I'm like, you're always looking at me.
Do the hook finger.
What I want is
to go to a magical world where there's magic and stuff, but because that's not gonna happen, I think I want to get better at writing so I can create worlds, my own worlds of magic and fantasy, so others can read it and feel like they're in that world.
That's another benefit of writing, is you can disappear into that world. I run this conference, right? This only takes a couple thousand hours out of my year, each year. And if you do the math, you're like, okay, 52 times 40, that's 2,000 hours. So full-time, this is my full-time job that I don't get paid for. Writing is my escape. Writing is where I get to disappear into a world of my own creation. You can't do it better than that. Do you think Walt Disney, didn't he want to make magic? Hired a bunch of engineers to make magic for him. And we've got Disneyland, Disney World, and a chance to do things that you can't do otherwise. With VR headsets now, you can do it at home and disappear into those worlds. So you create those worlds, understand there's a broader market when you create a great world. Well, coming back to Harry Potter, you've got the Harry Potter rides, Universal Studios, and other places where you can live that experience. So yes, there's nothing wrong with that at all. Your imagination. Everybody wants to make money out their imagination, don't they? Yeah. And any words you write, I'll tell you, they have value. Even if you write it and you can't sell it, it still has value because it's an opportunity to learn. The best experience you can get when writing, because you can just write 20 books and you're not going to make $50,000. But if you write one book and listen to the readers, get feedback, and then write the second book better, and then the third book, then you're going to see an upward trajectory for your revenue. And better means you're now writing books more aligned with what the reader expects, and better. How was your first book? How's your first book that you guys wrote? Eva?
I'm not sure how many sales we got.
Well, I don't care about the sales, but how was it received? Is it as good as the book you write now?
I'm not writing anything currently, but the second book, I think I got a lot more feedback than the first one.
Okay.
But the first one was also like a children's book.
Okay.
But I know lots of people, like I took it to my school and the teachers loved it. So I think both of them were well received, but the second one I got a lot more feedback on.
Okay. Your parents are authors. I would hope you get it through the first time, but you're writing better now. You're writing differently now. When you do write, pick an old person.
Oh.
Thanks for that. You're welcome.
No, I'm not going to fight him. She's going to be aggressive. What was the question? I'm sorry.
What do you want out of life?
Oh. I want to teach more people that I can face, that there is hope, even when everything looks hopeless and we are suffering and we are struggling, that there is something out there worth fighting for, and keep on keeping on.
Is that what you put in your books?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'll tell you what I want out of life is, as I'm in the twilight of my life, I've had heart surgery and stuff like that. So you see the wrong side of the ceiling in the wrong way. What I want is for people to be successful. That's why I put 2,000 hours a year into doing this conference. I want you guys to be successful.
And we thank you.
And thank you. And as the next generation of authors, what do you guys consider yourself? Do you consider yourself Gen Z or something like that?
I don't know at this point.
I never knew I did that. I was a baby boomer. I'm one of those people.
You're Gen Z or Gen Alpha, somewhere in the cusp there.
Okay. All right. Are you 21st century people? We call you 21st century people. You are the future. Because I'm writing books now, and I hope people will be reading them once I'm no longer here. But the books you're writing now, you might be 2 generations removed later and still hanging on, still hanging out, and then people reading your books. As I quoted yesterday, the book is longevity. The book is even an author that died 2,000 years ago is putting images into people's minds with the book, with the story. That's legacy. You're leaving a legacy behind for you, for your heirs at some point in time. I mean, you're not thinking of kids now, of course, but if you ever have them, that's what they are. Or your niece. You know, your sister's very prolific, and all of a sudden you've got like 6 nieces and nephews. I kid you not, my niece, getting a master's degree and then started deciding, she's a CEO. She's a CEO of a railroad and has 5 kids.
Wow.
So there's no reason, but I never expected that, but 5 kids in their chairs. No, I shouldn't say, the 3 boys are very active. They're very But anything you want out of life, you can get if you go for it. And that's, what do you want out of life? You can blend your stories in to help you achieve that. I want a magical world. I want a stable life. I want to be carefree. What if you only had to work 2 or 3 hours a day? Could you do that and enjoy yourself the rest of the day?
That would drive me insane.
Yeah, oh no, I have to work like 15 hours a day, every day, no matter what. The day of my son's wedding, I got 1,000 words. That was before we had to go down to the mandatory breakfast. What will make you stop writing as an author? What put you on the hook? What will make you stop writing?
I don't know what would make me stop writing. Because I feel like writing is just such an integral part of life. Like you never stop writing even if you're not like being an author. So I don't know what could really stop me from writing.
What will stop me is kind of, it kind of goes with what I want out of my life. What I want is essentially solitude in my mind. I want to get to a point where my mind feels calm and it stops racing with all the thoughts that I wanted to get out. And once I get out all my thoughts, then I guess I'll feel complete and then I'll stop writing. I feel like that's what
That's pretty deep, man. What you'll find when you write, I've got 130 books published. What you find when you write is you write a story, you get ideas for 2 more stories out of every story. So your mind never calms. However, I would suggest meditation. My wife leads meditation every couple times a week, and talk about calming the mind and things like that as a ancillary track to your life. That you can do that on command, but then also you can have your thoughts. Because I suggest that as you write, you're always going to have ideas in your mind. But good luck on your journey. That's a tough one. That's like Shaolin Temple kind of deep. Yes, sir.
I started writing 30 years ago, back in high school, and what stops me from writing is I didn't feel like there's any way I could get published back then. There wasn't anywhere for me to go, right? So I got married, started a family, raised 4 kids, and the opportunity that you have right now to build up your word count, build your backlog, while you're still being supported by your parents is enormous.
Yeah.
You know, that opportunity that you have to build up and become a writer and have that success with being able to publish so easily now is a huge opportunity that I wish I had. It wasn't until my wife started writing that I really felt like I could get into writing and start doing it. And I'm still working a full-time job because I got a family to support. You know, so I'm only writing like 1 book a year. And I'm in that safe zone when I really want to be able to get to where I can write full-time. And that's going to take a while for me. But, you know, my son here has an opportunity to, you know, to write and become that. And that's a huge opportunity that I think that if you don't take that now, you will regret that later.
One of the challenges of being an author is strangers reading your book and judging you. My next question is, what are you afraid of? When it comes to writing, what do you fear? And I can almost answer it for you. It's the judgment of others, that they're going to hate my story. They're going to hate me. And you have to insulate yourself against that, because that is simply a part of being a public person. And as a lawyer, public person has a technical definition. Once you put yourself out in the public like that, then defamation, you can't defame a public person. As an author, you are a public person. You can, but that's it takes a huge, huge bar to get over that and convince the world that it was malicious. Yeah.
How do you recommend they insulate themselves from that?
The two hats, the artist hat and the business hat. When you look at input, look at it with your business hat on. And I've actually gone so far as to tell people, have a physical hat that you wear when you're doing your business stuff. And that will help you with your mindset, because it's still inside your mind. It's still you. But sometimes you have to look at that feedback. Like when you get it back from your editor, it may be redlined a whole lot. How do you get past that? You say, oh geez, I should just quit. Because you see this mountain of work ahead of you, and you see that judgment of your book sucks, it's horrible. But then have a conversation with your editor, and they'll probably tell you that it wasn't a bad story. Just a few miscues. You said every sentence. You said, oh hey, we can clean that up. You have a crutch word. My first book, I said, hey, you say couple a lot, and that took. I'd already published it. Been out in a couple weeks, right? and one of the readers said, you use couple a lot. And I did a word search. It was like 240 pages. And I think I had 300 uses of the word couple. Everything was a couple. Couple this, couple that. I'm like, oh man. So I went through on the word search, couple, looked at it, do I really need it there? And I got it down to like 35. And no, I didn't change it to few. That was the first one. I changed it to few. Is it two? Is it important? I found a couple cans of gasoline, or I found gasoline. Good enough. Definitives. And you'll find crutch words. You'll find stuff like that. But that feedback, even though it hurt because I know better. I should have known better. You know what really makes you know better? You learn. You gotta practice. So what are you afraid of? I'm afraid of finding out the truth about myself. Hang on.
I just want to answer every question.
You have to face your fears. Because you're writing a book. If you want to make money off that book, you have to put it out there to strangers. Strangers will judge you. The best thing you can do to improve your chances that you're not going to get bad feedback is by writing to the reader expectations. And that doesn't mean prostitute yourself by writing exactly what you don't want to write because this is what you think they want to read. You're right, you hit those tropes. Every book is derivative. Every book has been written before, but it hasn't been written by you. Your story will be a little bit different. Take that story and deliver it and give it your voice, but to that reader, thinking about keeping that reader in mind. If you put the book in the right hands and it's a good story, readers are forgiving. And then it's a lot easier with the feedback when you get 9 people saying, I love the story, when's the next one coming out? and one person says you can't write. Okay, I'll take the 90%. You're in class, do you get A, B's, C's, and D's now? Yeah, what's 90%? Usually an A. Hey, I got an A. So if you have an A in your book, and they all paid for it, you know the 1-star review? You know what that person paid for your book? The same as everybody else. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for your contribution to the Carefree Fund. Yes.
What I'm afraid of is obscurity. I don't necessarily mind whether a person likes my story or not. Obviously I'll learn from it, but it's not something I'm afraid of. I could write a story that out of 100 people, 99 of them disliked. They saw a bunch of things wrong with it. They didn't like the story in general. I mean, that's fine because it's all about learning and improving. But the thing I'm most afraid of is when it doesn't get seen. It's lost in obscurity. I wrote a quote that I showed to my group. It said, "The border between existence and obscurity is pretty damn thin."
And you can make your own luck there. You make your own luck by you build a readership, and that takes time, it takes patience, and it takes targeting. And you know what you want to write. You know what your readership likes to read. That's what you can target them. And by target, I mean in a healthy way. Like you join those groups, and yeah, please be cool. You join those groups, you have conversations with the people, you talk about them, you join a Percy Jackson fan club. Oh, that's somebody else. And be one with them. And oh, by the way, would anybody like to read a story after you participated for a while? Now you start bringing people on board, and it only builds. It only builds more and more. So you can protect yourself from obscurity by writing a good story, being a good person who people want to help out. If you come across as kind of a dick, people want to help you. But if you come across as somebody who's helpful and hey, just have a healthy conversation, you don't need to tear anybody down. And you see that here. You see that throughout the whole conference, is that people are all about being helpful. Nobody's ripping on anybody, no drama. It's all about, hey, what can we do to do better as authors? How can we reach more readers? What do I need to do? Plotting, I mean, all kinds of great classes. And that's all about improving your odds to avoid obscurity. You're in the right place. And you're just, yeah.
For me, what I fear as an author isn't so much judgment or obscurity as it is getting into a cycle of I'm thinking so much about what I want to write that I don't actually end up writing it.
And you're not a writer. You're a thinker.
Yeah.
So, right. and this is something you have to reconcile yourself with. People daydream a whole lot. I daydreamed my whole life. But then I started writing. What you have to avoid is taking all those daydreams and putting them into the first story. You have to find a storyline that's narrower. Because otherwise you'll lose readers. It'll be too many genres blended together. Right. Oh, God.
Craig, would you talk a little tiny bit about how they might get started now working towards their business hat?
Okay. How do you get started now? That's a really good question. That's a tough question.
Think you can cover that in 5.5 minutes?
The best thing you can do is write the book. You want to write the book. And then you want to look at what's the right readership for this book. And once the book is written, then you can start, that's where you take off your artist hat and put on your business hat and look at it as a product. Okay, what other stories, if I were to look at a story like this, what would the cover look like? The best, Amazon has every book known to man on there. Okay, it doesn't, it has like 12 million. But you start browsing covers. It's like, okay, this, you click on it, and then all of a sudden you're training Amazon that, hey, this person likes these books. And then you click on the category and there's 50 books in that category. This is kind of, if you see this cover, that should entice you to read my book. So now let's get a cover that looks kind of like this. So you grab a bunch of those covers and you find a cover artist and you beg mom for $200 to buy a cover. And you go forth and you have a cover made like this, but with a second star in the sky or whatever it is that makes it unique. And don't get so wrapped around the axle that the cover has to be an exact scene from your book. The cover is to do what you just did, draw your eye and say, yes, that's a genre, that looks interesting. And also it has to be thumbnail size, because most people buy off their phone. So it has to look good at this size. A lot of people, especially fantasy, all you fantasy authors, they'll they want that intricate cover with all this. No, it's four points on the leaf, not 3. And stop it. It just has to be interesting and high epic fantasy, high fantasy, big scope, right? You want a castle in the distance. You have a sweeping landscape. Those are consistent covers for high fantasy. Paranormal. Ooh, splashes of purple in there. Post-apocalyptic, dystopian. You want some oranges and reds for the palette. A lot of consistency between covers. Reader expectations. And make your own luck by understanding, hey, these things. But you want to hire a professional cover artist, a good one. They'll know this stuff. This is high fantasy, so okay, here's the trends in high fantasy. They can help you. And now you're looking at your business hat. Okay, let me write a short story as a lead-in to my big long book, and then I can start giving it out to free and find out what the readers like, what are the right readers, build a mailing list. And you just keep those emails and then send them an email, hey, the book's ready. And start being a business. All of that stuff is available here. You're registered, you have access to the streaming and the recorded videos. Dig into and watch them. I mean, it's included as part of your registration for life. And you can watch the videos from previous conferences. Well, I really need one on bootstrapping. How do you build your business up when you have no money? Bootstrapping. Kevin Tomlinson gave that presentation here. If he hasn't given it yet, he'll give it within the next day and a half. But he gave it back in 2019, I believe. So you can go back to that YouTube video on the 20Books YouTube channel and watch it. How can you get your book into people? So much information. And us as 20Books to 50K, helping each other, authors helping authors. All the information is there. Somebody has to. So, yeah, nobody's going to carry you. Understand that. Nobody's going to carry you. You have to do the work. And we're helping you by being more focused with what you can learn. So if you want, like, how do I market my book when I have no money? Great, we've got stuff on that. We've had people talk about that. Pull up the video from 20Books London. Barry Hutchison from Scotland, so you got to follow his accent while he's talking about what he did with his first book. Because his wife didn't give him any money. So he made his own covers, and he did his own mark, and when he made money, then he could start investing back into it. But his wife gave him no money. That was the deal. You can write, but you're not taking any family money to do it. And now he's well over 7 figures, well over $1 million a year is what he makes.
What's his name?
Barry Hutchison. He writes Scottish crime fiction under J.D. Kirk. Exceptional author, hugely funny, and big guy too. I mean, enormous. There's a great world out there to be an author. There are readers. Recession-proof. Oh man, the inflation's going crazy. We don't, we can't go out to eat, once a month instead of once every week. Books are the greatest entertainment value people can find. You get a Kindle Unlimited membership for $9.99 a month, or you just go to the rave on Friday and you get 2 months for free. You can read all you can read. No cost. Well, I could stream Netflix. Come live where I live. You can't stream Netflix. I live in the middle of Alaska, and there's no stream. My Starlink arrived. So I get to plug it in and hook it up when I get home. All right, that's it. We're out of time. I hope you got something out of this. Think about those questions of what do you read, what do you write, what do you like to write, what's going to stop you from writing, and manage your fear. What are you afraid of when you get that book done or while you're writing the book? All right, thank you all. Thank you.